going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDoc.com, here with the Samsung Intensity 2 and the LG Octane, both from Verizon Wireless. Now Verizon has kind of an all-new messaging phone lineup because they stopped selling a couple of phones in retail stores. The NB Touch, the NB3, and the Samsung Reality are no longer available in their retail stores. So say you're trying to decide which messaging phone to get now that you've lost a few of your options. You may be looking at the Octane and the Intensity 2 wondering which one is better. Well, we're going to decide in a dogfight. So it's the Intensity 2 and the LG Octane, both from Verizon Wireless. They're both great messaging phones, but which one should you get? That's what we're going to find out. I'm Sydney from PhoneDoc.com. Let's go check it out. Okay, so here we have the Octane on the left and the Intensity 2 on the right. And, just first of all, comparing them hardware-wise, they're pretty much the same size. If you put them side by side, the Intensity 2 is just a little bit taller, you'll notice, but the Octane is a little bit thicker. So the Intensity is a little bit taller and thinner, but pretty much the same size. And then, hardware-wise, we have pretty much the same design here, a display with a D-pad and then a dialing pad. The main difference is that this is not the main display for the Octane. So it's a little bit smaller than the Intensity 2's display. This is a 2.2-inch QVGA display on the Intensity 2. But this is not the main display on the Octane, so it's a little bit smaller and not a lot of functionality on it in terms of your options. You can view your messages and contacts and your music. But this is really where you're going to do most of the navigating. So we'll compare these two displays. Like I said, the Intensity 2 has a 2.2-inch QVGA display, so it has a resolution of 320 by 240. The Octane, this is also a QVGA display, 320 by 240, but it's a little bit bigger. It's a 2.6-inch display. And actually, if you compare them, the camera, you probably can't tell on the camera, but the Octane's display does look a little bit better. For some reason on the Intensity 2, it has a very peculiar viewing angle, and I'm not really sure what it is, but if you just tilt it the slightest, it's not quite as clear as if you're looking straight on. And so it looks a little better on the Octane. That may be a personal thing, but it's definitely something that I noticed and that you'll probably notice once you see the Intensity 2. You just probably can't tell on the camera. So the Octane does have a slightly larger display, but the overall, the UI and the functionality is very similar. So you have two soft keys here, two soft keys here. Push the center button to go to the menu, and then once you get to the menu, you'll notice they're exactly the same. So, both Verizon standard options, you have Bing, messages, settings, call history. So it's basically the same exact UI and the same options. Neither one of them has a touchscreen. And so we'll get on to the keyboard now. This is the Octane's keyboard. It's a clamshell design, so you notice you just open it up and there's a keyboard. Whereas the Intensity 2, you slide it open. Now once you slide it open, the UI switches to horizontal mode, and then you can use these two soft keys, whereas before you used these two soft keys. So comparing the keyboards, they're similar in some ways and then different in others. They have basically the same layout, so you have a dedicated number row on each. And then you have the space bar between the V and the B. You have a D-pad. The D-pad on the Octane is more pronounced. It's definitely there. And it's not within the letters like it is, on the Intensity 2. But both do have a D-pad. And in typing, I found that they're both pretty comfortable. Now, the keys are designed a little differently. So on the Octane, they're pretty plasticky. They're not too slippery. They have enough of a grip to them to where you can easily type. But they are kind of plasticky, a little more firm, and then they're angled sort of at the bottom. Whereas on the Intensity 2, they're basically just flat, kind of have sort of a bubble design, but they're more rubbery. They're that rubbery, mushy kind. And some people don't like that. To me, I think they're both great keyboards, but it is something to take note of because, like I say, a lot of people don't like the rubbery, mushy keys, and they prefer the more solid, more firm, plasticky keys. So that's something to take note of. But I really found that, typing was just as easy on both keyboards. They do also feature threaded text messaging. So you can see it's shown kind of in a speech bubble. And the same thing with the Octane. We'll go to messaging. So see, it's pretty much the same design. So I'll move on now to the camera. They do both have a camera. The Intensity 2 has a 1.3 megapixel camera, which is actually extremely puny and not even worth talking about. It has night vision, a self-timer, white balance functions, but with 1.3 megapixels, no autofocus or flash, you're really not going to get, it'll barely be good enough for snapshots to send, just to another phone, really. But the Octane has a 3.2 megapixel fixed focus camera, also has a flash, you'll notice, and then it does capture video in QVGA resolution, so again 320 by 240. So the Octane definitely has a much better camera. It's not stellar. I would expect better from a 3.2 megapixel camera, especially since it has the flash and the focus, but it is definitely better than the Intensity 2. So while neither one really stood out, when you compare both of them together, the Octane definitely was much better. The camera was much better. So we'll move on to battery life. If we take the battery cover here off on the Octane, we'll show the battery. It's a 950 milliamp hour battery, and then the Intensity 2 has a 1000 milliamp hour battery. So both, have pretty good battery life, and in terms of messaging devices, they were not bad. I got generally about 2.5 days of standard use, and then on standby, it's going to last a lot longer, but battery life was definitely pretty good. They do both have micro SD card slots. The Octane supports up to 16 gigabytes, whereas the Intensity 2 supports up to 32 gigabytes. Okay, so now we'll talk about price. For a lot of people, that's going to be the main determining factor, and the Intensity is much cheaper than the Octane. It's only $29.99 on contract, and then the Octane is $99. So $100 compared to $30. The Intensity 2 is much cheaper. But, basically one thing to take note of, like I said earlier, the Intensity 2 is pretty much just a cheaper version of the Octane, made by different companies, Samsung and LG, but just really in terms of design, specs, performance, it's pretty much just a cheaper version of the Octane. The Octane has a much better build quality, a more solid design. The display looks better, has a better camera. The Intensity 2 is also a great phone, but it's just a little bit cheaper. It's more plasticky. The keyboard, isn't quite as solidly built, although, you may prefer this style of keyboard. So they're both, great messaging phones, but, in terms of just design, performance, just overall, the performance of the phone, the Octane is definitely better, but then again, it's also, $70 more. So, that's just depending on, what you prefer, what you want, but the Octane is $70 more, the Intensity 2 is $30. So that's pretty much it, guys. The Intensity 2 versus the LG Octane, and in a lot of ways it just comes down to what you want, what you prefer, and also your price range. You may not be able to pay $100. If that's the case, you'll be perfectly satisfied with the Intensity 2. But if you can't afford $100, I would say go with the Octane. It's just a better phone all around. So thanks so much, guys, for watching. Hopefully this helped you out in making your decision. If you have any other questions, you can follow me on Twitter. My screen name is It's My Job to Know, and you can ask me a question, and I'll try my best to answer it. Also, check out phonedog.com for more news, updates, and reviews, and our Facebook page, facebook.com/phonedog. We're giving away right now up to 100 iPads and also 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. So be sure and check out our Facebook page. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I'm Sydney from phonedog.com, and I'll see you guys later.